The resplendent will abide an ancient lunar-class cruiser exited the warp with a shudder, entering real space within the Athraxian sector. It had been a journey of only 13 hours, though doubtless a greater deal of time had transpired outside of the warp. High Inquisitor Vendrella Sarthus took a sip of tea from an impossibly old bone china cup. Her sharp brown eyes scanned her desk for the chronometer, making sure that it had not experienced the misfortune of time dilation in the warp and has arrived at their destination tens or perhaps hundreds of years late. All was well in that regard. 16 days had passed, a figure well within acceptable tolerance, though admittedly her tolerance in general was very thin at present. She snatched up a cracked data slate, reading the missive within for the 100th time, perhaps the 1000th. A sense of bitter injustice, of black insult, gnawed in the pit of her stomach. She read it aloud to an audience of disinterested tech servants, sages, scribes, and penitents that made up her inquisitorial entourage. They knew enough to ignore her ranting by this point. Her pride was wounded, and that was better than their own flesh for an unguarded comment. She began to read, her tone insufferably scornful.
From the Office of the Inquisitorial Synod, Ordo Xenos. Inquisitor Sarthus, conclude your research on the Dabhani moons and make haste to Athraxia Prime. The Consul Generous, Shem Chanthras, has been assassinated. His shuttle has been shot down over the jungles there. Suspected Aldrani agents in vicinity. Investigate the crash site and enact any extermination protocols necessary. Captain Tarvik and several Deathwatch teams await you aboard the Aegis of Wrath, which is now en route to collect you. Determine why this request did not originate with the planetary governor, Lucius Quintrilis. The Chanthras family station on Terra have petitioned me personally. The martyring of a decorated Imperial commander by Xenos attack is something that requires an appropriate response. Take all necessary steps. In the name of the Emperor, so it shall be done.
Inquisitor Sarthus threw the data slate to the floor. An acolyte snatched it up wordlessly and returned it to her desk, drawing a wrathful look. She pushed away the cup of tepid liquid, suddenly filled with disgust and fury. Her faithful avian mastiff Ithacus stared at her feet, its ventral sensory spines detecting her growing anger. There was a click from a ballistic mechanism fused to its spine, which drew a cry from a foolish adept, before they were hastily reminded by another that the Stormbolter attachment that usually was attached here was stored safely. Sarthus reached a hand down to ruffle the plumage on the back of Ithacus' neck. She was very fond of her companion, far more than a gaggle of hangers-on and incompetence that the Ordo Xenos has sought to burden her with. Didn't they recognize her important work? She was so close to identifying the cause of disruption on Dan Barney. She had suspicions, such tantalizing expectations of who her opponents were. As the closest inquisitor to the Athraxian sector, she was instead doomed to be waylaid on a fruitless hunt for a foe that probably wasn't even present. Everything was always blamed on the accursed Aldari. If a child tripped on Armageddon, it was a troop of rangers that caused it. If a servo harness went missing on Agrippina, it was the work of a fiendish Drukari cabal. So much of her valuable time was wasted on the fancies of imbeciles, and now she was forced to allow her true quarry to escape while she was sent on another useless task. Ithacus screeched as her nails dug into its genetically modified flesh, but it knew better than to bite the hand that fed. Inquisitor Sarthus snapped out of her irritated thoughts at the cry and made a cooing sound to her favourite pet.
There, my darling Ithacus. Whoever brought us to this steaming wasteland will rue the day they drew the attention of the Ordo Xenos. Yes, someone shall pay dearly for this.